The sidewalk. The relentless summer sun baked the cracked concrete of Hillview Boulevard, a street where laughter was rare and dreams seemed to suffocate under the weight of poverty. The city thrummed with activity, cars honking, street vendors shouting, the occasional shriek of children dodging between parked vehicles. But in this cacophony, 13-year-old Malik Walker felt invisible. He sat on the blistering sidewalk, his knees hugged tightly to his chest, his bare feet scorched from days of wandering without shoes. Malik's thin frame bore the evidence of his struggles. A tattered t-shirt, now several shades darker from dirt, and jeans with holes that weren't the fashionable kind. His stomach growled, protesting against its near-empty state. Breakfast, if it could be called that, had been the last crust of bread he could find in their apartment, shared with his mother and his younger sister Nina. Lunch was a faint hope, and dinner an unlikely miracle. The garbage truck rumbled past, sending a waft of rotting food into the air. Malik barely flinched. He was used to it. The driver, a burly man with a rough face but a kind heart, had once tossed Malik a sandwich from the cab. Today, however, he just waved, the truck's compactor growling like an angry beast. Malik nodded back, his expression unreadable. A mother's struggle. Back at their tiny one-bedroom apartment, things were no better. Sharon Walker, Malik's mother, worked 2 jobs cleaning houses in the wealthier parts of town. She left early, came home late, and stretched every dollar like a magician, though even her best tricks couldn't make ends meet. Bills piled up on the chipped kitchen counter, electric, water, overdue rent notices. Sharon tried to shield her children from the worst of it, but Malik was old enough to understand their precarious situation. That morning, as she tied her worn sneakers, Sharon had knelt in front of him, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion but determined. "Malik," she'd said, brushing his unruly curls back, "look after your sister, and don't you go wandering too far, do you hear me?" "Yes, Mama," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. Her hand lingered on his shoulder. "We're gonna get through this," she whispered, though her voice cracked with doubt. "Just stay strong for me." He had nodded but didn't answer. He knew better than to make promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Dreams deferred. Now, on the scorching sidewalk, Malik closed his eyes and imagined a different life. A house with a backyard where Nina could play safely. A fridge full of food that didn't have to be rationed. A school where he wasn't teased for his clothes, or the holes in his sneakers, or lack thereof. His daydream was interrupted by a group of older boys loitering nearby. Malik recognized them immediately. The local crew, self-styled kings of the block, led by Jamal Big J Carter. At 17, Big J had dropped out of school and built a reputation as someone you didn't mess with. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and always surrounded by a group of lackeys who hung on his every word. Well, Big J drawled, his voice carrying over the din of the street. "If it ain't Malik the Mouse." Malik braced himself, his heart pounding. He hated that nickname. "What do you want?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Big J smirked, pulling a crumpled dollar bill from his pocket and letting it flutter to the ground. "I heard you been scrounging around for cans. That true?" Malik hesitated. "So what if I am?" Big J's grin widened, showing off a gold tooth. "You know the deal. You work on this block, you pay us 20% of whatever you make. For protection." Malik's fists clenched. Protection. From what? From them. He wanted to say it, but he knew better. Instead, he muttered, "I don't have anything right now." Big G stepped closer, looming over him. "That's funny," he said, his tone darkening. "'Cause I saw you yesterday with that bag of cans. You holding out on me, Mouse." Before Malik could answer, one of Big G's lackeys grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. Pain shot through Malik's shoulder, and he bit down hard on his lip to keep from crying out. "Let's see if you're lying," Big J said, reaching for the small backpack Malik always carried. Inside was his haul from the morning, maybe $2 worth of aluminum cans. Big G dumped them out onto the sidewalk, the clattering sound drawing the attention of passersby, who quickly looked away. $2. Big G sneered, kicking the cans aside. That's it. Pathetic. I needed it for food, Malik said through gritted teeth. For my sister. Big J leaned in, his face inches from Malik's. That ain't my problem. You got till tomorrow to pay up. Mouse. Double, since you made me wait. He shoved Malik hard, sending him sprawling onto the sidewalk. The gang walked off, their laughter echoing down the street. A chance encounter. Malik lay there for a moment, staring up at the cloudless sky. His arm throbbed, and his pride felt even more bruised. Slowly, he sat up, gathering the scattered cans with shaking hands. As he did, he noticed a sleek black car idling at the curb. The windows were tinted, but he could feel someone watching him. His first instinct was to run. Cars like that usually meant trouble. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, with neatly combed salt and pepper hair, wearing a suit that probably cost more than a year's rent for Malik's family. But it wasn't the man's clothes that struck Malik. It was his expression. Concerned, curious, kind. You all right there? The man asked, his voice deep but gentle. Malik froze, clutching the cans like a lifeline. I'm fine, he said quickly, his eyes darting around for Big G's crew. The man didn't move closer but crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to Malik's level. Name's Darren Parker, he said. I was driving by and saw what happened. Those kids giving you trouble. Malik shook his head quickly. No, it's nothing. Darren studied him for a moment, then straightened. You eaten today? Malik's stomach growled loudly, betraying him. Darren smiled slightly. Thought so. There's a diner across the street. My treat. I'm not supposed to go with strangers, Malik said automatically. Darren nodded, clearly impressed. Smart kid. How about this? You pick the place. We sit where everyone can see us. And if you're uncomfortable, you can leave any time. Deal? Malik hesitated, eyeing the man warily. His mother's voice echoed in his head, warning him about trusting people, but the growling in his stomach was louder. He glanced at the diner, a place he often passed, but had never been able to afford. Finally, he nodded. Deal. The first step. Inside the diner. The air conditioning was a relief after the oppressive heat. Malik slid into a booth by the window, his eyes darting nervously to Darren. The waitress, a friendly older woman named Maria, approached with a smile. What'll it be, sweetie? Malik hesitated, glancing at the menu. Just a burger, he said finally. Darren raised an eyebrow. Make it a burger, fries, and a milkshake, he said to Maria. Then looked at Malik. You're a growing boy. You need more than that. As they waited for the food, Darren leaned back in the booth. So, Malik, he began, what's your story? Malik hesitated again, unsure how much to reveal. But there was something about Darren's demeanor, calm, patient, non-judgmental, that made him feel safe. Slowly, he began to talk. About his dad, who had died in a construction accident 2 years ago. About his mom, who worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep them afloat. About Nina, who deserved so much more than he could give her. Darren listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. When Malik finished, he felt lighter, as if sharing his burdens had eased them somehow. The food arrived, and Malik ate slowly, savoring every bite. Darren didn't press him for more details but asked him simple questions, what he liked to do, what he wanted to be when he grew up. By the time they left the diner, Malik found himself smiling, a rare occurrence these days. As they stepped back onto the sidewalk, Darren handed Malik a business card. If you ever need help, call me, he said. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he pulled a $20 bill from his wallet. For now, get yourself something nice. Shoes, maybe. Malik stared at the money, his eyes wide. I can't take this, he protested. Yes, you can, Darren said firmly. and you will. For the first time in a long time, Malik felt something he thought he'd lost. Hope. As Darren drove away, Malik clutched the card and the $20 tightly, his mind racing. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better. Seeds of change. The $20 bill in Malik's hand felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried the weight of his uncertain future. He stood on the corner of Hillview Boulevard, the sun now sinking low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Around him, the city continued its ceaseless hum of life. Car engines revving, a street vendor shouting about fresh tacos, and the occasional blare of a police siren in the distance. Malik's fingers tightened around the money. He wasn't used to having something like this. Sure, it wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, but to him, it was monumental. He could buy shoes, maybe even a meal for Nina, or, he thought bitterly, he could give it to Big J and his crew and hope they wouldn't demand more tomorrow. His stomach churned at the thought of handing over something that could mean so much to his family. Yet the memory of Big J's mocking laughter, his threats, lingered in Malik's mind like a dark cloud. Nina's smile. By the time Malik reached their apartment building, dusk had settled over the neighborhood. The air was cooler now, but the faint smell of garbage still lingered, a reminder of their reality. He climbed the 5 flights of stairs carefully, his bare feet stinging with every step. Inside, their apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Nina, his 6-year-old sister, sat on the floor with her worn-out doll, a toy that had seen better days but was still her prized possession. She looked up as Malik entered, her big brown eyes lighting up. "Malik," she exclaimed, rushing to hug him. He winced slightly as her small arms squeezed his bruised ribs but hugged her back tightly. "Hey, Squirt. Mama home?" Nina shook her head. "Not yet. She said she'd be late again." Malik sighed. He hated that Nina spent so many hours alone, though their neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, usually kept an eye on her. Malik set the $20 on the table, feeling Nina's curious gaze. "What's that?" she asked. "Money," Malik said simply. "I met someone who wanted to help." "Help us?" Nina's voice was small, hopeful. She was too young to fully understand their struggles, but old enough to notice the empty fridge and the flickering lights. "Yeah," Malik said, ruffling her hair. "He said we deserve a break." Nina smiled, her gap-toothed grin a beacon of innocence in their otherwise bleak world. Malik felt his resolve harden. He wasn't going to let Big J take this from them. A desperate decision. Later that night, after Nina had fallen asleep on the couch, Malik sat at the rickety kitchen table, staring at the business card Darren had given him. The name printed in clean, bold letters felt foreign to Malik, like a fragment from another world. "Darren Parker, financial consultant. Call me if you need help." Malik traced the edges of the card, his mind racing. What kind of help could Darren offer? Could he really trust a man he'd just met? Malik's instincts told him to be cautious, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that Darren's kindness was genuine. Still, the memory of Big J's threats loomed large. The next morning, Malik woke early. His stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten since the burger Darren had bought him. He checked on Nina, who was still asleep, then grabbed the $20 bill from the table and slipped out the door. The dollar store was only a few blocks away, and the walk gave Malik time to think. By the time he arrived, he had made up his mind. He bought a pair of cheap sneakers for himself, a loaf of bread, and a small carton of milk. As he left the store, he felt lighter, not just because of the food and shoes, but because he had chosen to use the money for something good, something his family needed. The shadow returns. When Malik returned to the apartment, Nina was awake, nibbling on the last piece of bread they had left. Her face lit up when she saw the loaf in his hand. "Look what I got," Malik said, placing the bread and milk on the table. He showed her the new sneakers, and she clapped her hands in delight. For a moment, Their tiny apartment felt like a sanctuary. But the moment was short-lived. A sharp knock rattled the door, and Malik's heart sank. He knew that knock. "Open up, Mouse." Big G's voice called from the hallway. "We know you're in there." Nina froze, her eyes wide with fear. Malik gestured for her to stay put and slowly opened the door. Big J leaned against the doorframe, flanked by two of his crew. His grin was as menacing as ever. "Morning, Mouse," he said. "You got our money." Malik stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him to shield Nina from the encounter. "I don't have anything for you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Big J raised an eyebrow. "That's so. 'Cause I heard you were seen at the dollar store. Nice shoes, by the way." He glanced down at Malik's feet. "You know the rules, Mouse. You work this block, you pay up. They're for my family," Malik said, his voice trembling. Big G's expression darkened. "We don't care about your family. You think you're special. Think you can just keep what you earn." He stepped closer, his voice lowering to a dangerous growl. "You've got till tomorrow to pay double. And if you don't..." He didn't finish the sentence, but Malik understood the threat. Big J and his crew walked away, their laughter echoing down the hallway. Reaching out, Malik stood there for a long moment, his fists clenched, anger and fear swirling inside him. When he finally went back inside, Nina looked up at him, her small face worried. "Who was it?" she asked. "No one," Malik lied, forcing a smile. "Just some guys from the building." But as the day wore on, the weight of the situation pressed down on him. By evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Malik made a decision. He pulled out Darren's business card and stared at it for a long moment before dialing the number. The phone rang twice before Darren answered. "This is Darren Parker." Malik hesitated. "It's Malik. From yesterday." Darren's tone immediately softened. "Malik. Hey. How are you doing?" Malik swallowed hard, the words catching in his throat. "I need help." "Where are you?" Darren asked, his voice steady and calm. "At home. My mom's at work." "Stay put," Darren said. "I'll be there in 30 minutes." An unlikely ally. True to his word, Darren arrived half an hour later, his sleek black car standing out against the graffiti-covered walls of the building. Malik met him outside, glancing nervously down the street, but Big J and his crew were nowhere to be seen. Darren stepped out of the car, his presence commanding but not intimidating. He took one look at Malik's worried face and said, "Tell me everything." At first, the words came slowly, but once Malik started talking, he couldn't stop. He told Darren about Big J, the threats, and the impossible demand for money. Darren listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every word. When Malik finished, Darren placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing calling me," he said. "You don't have to face this alone." "What can you do?" Malik asked, his voice small. Darren's smile was faint but reassuring. "More than you think. But first, I need to talk to your mother." A glimmer of hope. Later that evening, when Sharon returned from work, Malik introduced her to Darren. At first, she was wary. A stranger in a suit offering help was far from normal in their world. But as Darren explained who he was and what he wanted to do, Sharon's skepticism began to fade. "I don't understand," she said finally. "Why would you help us?" Darren's expression softened. "Because someone helped me when I was in your son's position, and because I believe in paying it forward." Sharon glanced at Malik, who nodded encouragingly. Finally, she sighed. "All right, what's the plan?" Darren's smile widened. "First, we deal with the immediate problem. Then we start building something better for all of you." As Malik listened to Darren outline his ideas, for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of something he barely recognized. Hope. A new plan. The next morning dawned with a faint promise of relief. though Malik wasn't sure how Darren's presence could truly change things. He sat at the kitchen table, absent-mindedly swirling the last bit of milk in his bowl of cereal. Nina was humming softly in the living room, brushing the hair of her worn-out doll. The air felt different, not as heavy, as if Darren's promise of help had lifted some of the weight off their shoulders. Sharon stood by the window, twisting a dish rag in her hands as she glanced nervously at the street below. "You really think this man can help us, Malik?" she asked quietly. Malik nodded. "He says he can." Sharon sighed, turning away from the window. A lot of people say a lot of things. Not many follow through. Before Malik could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sharon tensed, her eyes darting toward it. "It's him," Malik said quickly, standing up. Sharon hesitated, then nodded. "All right, let him in." The intervention. When Darren stepped into the apartment, his presence seemed to fill the small space. He was dressed more casually today, dark slacks and a crisp shirt, but he still carried the quiet authority of someone who knew how to handle himself. He greeted Sharon with a warm smile and nodded at Nina, who peeked out from behind the couch. "This is a nice place," Darren said, looking around. "Small, sure, but you've done a good job keeping it together." Sharon's lips twitched in a faint smile. "It's not much, but it's home." Darren nodded, then gestured for Malik and Sharon to sit. Once they were settled, he got straight to the point. "Malik told me about the situation with Big J. I've dealt with people like him before, and trust me, they thrive on fear. The more scared you are, the more power they have." Sharon frowned. "You make it sound simple, but these kids, they're dangerous. They don't care about the police, and they definitely don't care about us." Darren leaned forward, his expression serious. "You're right, but what they do care about is money and reputation. If we can make them realize that messing with your family isn't worth the trouble, they'll back off." Malik frowned. "How do we do that?" Darren smiled faintly. "By hitting them where it hurts, legally, financially, and socially. But before we get into that, I need to know, are you willing to stand up to them?" Sharon hesitated, glancing at Malik. "If it means keeping my kids safe, yes." Darren nodded. "Good. Here's the plan." Building a case. Over the next 2 days, Darren worked tirelessly to gather information on Big J and his crew. He made calls, spoke to local businesses, and even enlisted the help of a private investigator who specialized in gang activity. Malik watched in awe as Darren coordinated everything with precision, as if he'd been preparing for this moment his entire life. Sharon, though still skeptical, began to warm to Darren's methods. He had a way of explaining things that made even the most daunting tasks seem manageable. "This isn't just about you," he said one evening as they sat around the table. "It's about setting an example for others in this neighborhood. If we can show people that these gangs aren't invincible, we can start to take back control." Malik nodded, his determination growing. For years, he had felt powerless, but now, for the first time, he believed that change was possible. Facing the crew. By the 3rd day, Darren had compiled enough evidence to involve the authorities. He arranged a meeting with a local detective who specialized in gang-related cases. Sharon insisted on coming along, leaving Nina with Mrs. Jenkins. The detective, a no-nonsense woman named Officer Layla Grant, listened intently as Darren laid out everything. The extortion, the threats, and even Malik's personal encounters with Big J. When Darren finished, she leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes narrowing. "This is solid," she said, "but it won't be easy. These kids know how to cover their tracks, and witnesses around here are hard to come by." Darren nodded. "That's why we're not just relying on witnesses. We've got audio recordings, surveillance footage from local businesses, and financial records that show their extortion racket." Officer Grant's eyebrows rose. "You've been busy." "I believe in being thorough," Darren said with a small smile. Grant looked at Sharon and Malik. "You understand that this could get messy, right? These guys don't like being backed into a corner." Sharon straightened in her seat. We've been living in fear long enough. If there's a chance to stop them, we'll take it. Malik nodded in agreement, his jaw set. The confrontation. That evening, Darren accompanied Malik to the diner where they had first met. It wasn't just for food this time. It was a strategic move. Word had spread that Darren was involved, and Big G's crew had taken notice. As they sat in the booth by the window, Darren leaned across the table. Remember, Malik, confidence is key. They'll try to intimidate you, but you can't let them see you're scared. Malik nodded, though his hands trembled slightly. He was about to face Big J again, but this time he wasn't alone. Sure enough, as they left the diner, Big J and two of his crew members were waiting outside. The streetlight cast long shadows, making them look even more menacing. Well, Big J drawled, stepping forward. If it ain't Mouse and his new babysitter. Darren smiled faintly. Evening, gentlemen. Big G's grin faltered slightly at Darren's calm demeanor. What's this? You think you're gonna scare us off with your fancy suit? Darren stepped closer, his expression turning steely. No. I think the fact that the police have all the evidence they need to arrest you might do the trick. Big G's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Extortion, assault, illegal possession of weapons. Shall I go on? Darren's voice was cold and steady. Right now, your little operation is hanging by a thread. One wrong move, and it all comes crashing down. Big J glanced at his crew, who shifted uncomfortably. You're bluffing, he said, though his voice wavered. Darren reached into his pocket and pulled out a folder. I don't bluff. This is a copy of everything we've got on you. The original's already in the hands of Detective Grant. Big J stared at the folder, his jaw tightening. A new beginning. The next morning, Darren returned with even more news. He had secured a scholarship for Malik at a nearby charter school and lined up a job interview for Sharon with a property management company. This is just the beginning, he said. You've got a long road ahead, but I'll be here every step of the way. As Malik slipped on his new sneakers and prepared to face the day, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was moving forward. And with Darren's help, he knew anything was possible. Rebuilding dreams. The weeks following Big J's retreat marked the beginning of a transformation in Malik's life. The weight of constant fear had been lifted, but it left behind a strange emptiness, like the silence after a storm. Malik, Sharon, and Nina were free to hope, but hope felt foreign, almost dangerous. Could they really trust that things were getting better? The first day. The morning of Malik's first day at the new charter school was bright and crisp, the kind of day that begged for optimism. Sharon fussed over Malik's clothes, clean jeans, and a new polo shirt Darren had bought for him. The fabric felt soft and unfamiliar against his skin, a stark contrast to the scratchy hand-me-downs he was used to. You look handsome, Sharon said, brushing a speck of lint from his shoulder. She hesitated, her hand lingering there. You nervous? Malik shrugged. A little. She crouched down so they were eye level. Listen to me, baby. You've been through more than most kids your age. You're stronger than you think. You belong in that school just as much as anyone else. Malik nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He hugged her tightly before grabbing his backpack and heading out the door. A new world. The charter school was a world away from his old public school. The building was modern, with bright hallways and classrooms that smelled of fresh paint and new books. Malik couldn't help but stare at the students milling around him. Their clothes were clean, their backpacks stuffed with supplies, and their laughter came easily. He felt out of place, a visitor in someone else's story. Malik Walker, a friendly voice called. He turned to see a woman with short, curly hair and glasses. She wore a lanyard that identified her as Ms. Green, the school counselor. Welcome. I'll be showing you around today. Malik nodded mutely and followed her down the hall. Ms. Green pointed out the library, the cafeteria, and the gym, each space more impressive than the last. Malik couldn't remember the last time he'd seen a library that wasn't full of torn books or a gym with intact equipment. "You'll be in Mr. Carter's homeroom," Ms. Green said, stopping in front of a classroom door. "He's one of our best teachers. Don't worry, you'll fit right in." But as Malik stepped into the room, he wasn't so sure. The other students barely noticed him at first, too busy chatting or checking their phones. Malik slipped into a seat near the back, hoping to go unnoticed. But soon, the teacher, a tall man with a booming voice and an easy smile, called for attention. "Class, we have a new student joining us today. Malik, why don't you introduce yourself?" Malik froze, every eye in the room turning toward him. He stood slowly, his hands trembling. Hi, I'm Malik," he mumbled. Mr. Carter smiled warmly. "We're glad to have you here. Everyone, make sure Malik feels welcome, all right?" A few students nodded or murmured greetings, but Malik wasn't sure if they meant it. He sank back into his chair, wishing he could disappear. After school, the first day wasn't as bad as Malik had feared, but it wasn't easy either. He struggled to keep up with the classwork, which was far more advanced than what he was used to. By the end of the day, his head ached from trying to absorb everything. When the final bell rang, Malik made his way to the front office, where Darren had promised to pick him up. As he waited, he saw other kids piling into cars driven by parents who smiled and waved. Malik couldn't remember the last time his mom had been able to pick him up from school. She was always working, always tired. Darren's sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and Malik climbed in silently. Darren glanced at him. "Rough day." Malik shrugged. "It's just different. Everyone there has it together. They have nice stuff. They're smart. I don't think I belong." Darren pulled the car into traffic, his expression thoughtful. "Let me tell you something, Malik. When I was your age, I felt the same way. I went to a school where I was the only kid from a poor neighborhood. I didn't think I'd make it, either." Malik looked at him, surprised. "What happened?" "I worked hard," Darren said simply. "And I asked for help when I needed it. You're not alone, Malik. You've got people in your corner. Use them." Sharon's breakthrough. Meanwhile, Sharon was adjusting to her new job at the property management company. It wasn't easy. There was a steep learning curve, and she often doubted herself. But Darren had been right. Sharon's years of managing her family's struggles had given her a unique kind of resilience. One afternoon, her supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Janice, pulled her aside. "You've got a knack for this, Sharon," she said. "You're organized, you handle tenants well, and you don't shy away from tough situations. Have you thought about taking the certification course? We'll cover the cost." Sharon blinked, stunned. "A course? I mean, I'd love to, but I'm not sure I can handle school on top of everything else." Janice smiled. "I think you'd surprise yourself. Talk it over with your family." That evening, over dinner, Sharon told Malik about the offer. "What do you think?" she asked, nervously twisting her napkin. Malik grinned. "You should do it, Mama. You always tell me to be brave and try new things. Now it's your turn." Sharon laughed, tears in her eyes. "All right, baby. I'll give it a shot." A setback. Just as things seemed to be improving, Malik faced his first major challenge at school. A group project in science required him to work with 3 other students, none of whom seemed particularly interested in including him. "Just do the easy part," one of them, a boy named Tyler, said dismissively. "We'll handle the rest." Malik's jaw tightened. He didn't want to be the weak link, but the material was so far beyond what he'd learned at his old school that he felt lost. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at the project instructions with a sinking feeling. Darren stopped by later to drop off some groceries and noticed Malik's frustration. "What's going on?" he asked. Malik hesitated, then blurted out, "I'm stupid. Everyone at school knows more than me. I can't do this." Darren pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "You're not stupid, Malik. You're playing catch-up, and that's hard. But you've already shown you can handle hard things." Malik shook his head. "I don't even know where to start." Darren smiled. "Good thing you've got me, then." Over the next hour, Darren walked Malik through the project step by step, breaking it down into manageable pieces. By the end, Malik felt a spark of confidence. Maybe he wasn't as far behind as he thought. A small victory. The day the project was due, Malik walked into class with a mix of nerves and determination. When it was their group's turn to present, Malik spoke clearly and confidently about his part of the project. To his surprise, Mr. Carter praised their work, even noting how well Malik had explained a tricky concept. After class, Tyler approached him. "Hey man," he said, looking sheepish, "you did good. Sorry for earlier." Malik nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. It wasn't much, but it felt like the beginning of something. A new chapter. That evening, as Malik sat at the kitchen table doing homework, Sharon returned home with exciting news. "I passed the entrance exam for the certification course," she said, her face glowing. "I start next week." Malik grinned. "That's awesome, Mama." "And you?" Sharon asked, ruffling his hair. "How was school?" Malik thought about the day, the challenges, the small victory, and the feeling that he was finally starting to find his place. "It's getting better," he said simply. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but inside their tiny apartment, something extraordinary was happening. Malik and Sharon were rebuilding their dreams, one small step at a time. And for the first time in years, the future felt bright. Trials and triumphs. The months that followed were a blur of challenges and milestones for Malik and his family. The process of rebuilding their lives was anything but smooth. Progress came in fits and starts, with moments of triumph often shadowed by unexpected setbacks. But through it all, they clung to the fragile but growing hope that things could truly be different. Sharon's leap forward. Sharon's property management certification course was no small undertaking. Every week, she spent hours after work poring over textbooks, watching online lectures, and practicing for exams. The coursework was demanding, but Sharon tackled it with the same grit that had kept her family afloat through years of hardship. One evening, after finishing a particularly grueling assignment, Sharon sat back in her chair, exhaustion etched on her face. Malik, sitting across from her with his own homework, looked up. "You okay, Mama?" Sharon nodded, smiling faintly. "Just tired, baby. It's a lot to juggle." "You're doing great," Malik said. "Way better than I could." Sharon chuckled. "Don't sell yourself short. You're working hard too. And don't think I haven't noticed your grades going up." Malik grinned, a little sheepish. His grades were improving, thanks to Darren's tutoring and his own determination. But he wasn't the only one succeeding. Sharon's supervisor, Janice, had already hinted that there might be a promotion waiting for her after she completed the course. Facing old demons, not everything was smooth sailing. One afternoon, Malik spotted Big J in their old neighborhood while walking home from school. Big J wasn't alone. He was flanked by two new crew members, his swagger as confident as ever. For a moment, Malik froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yo, Mouse," Big J called, his voice dripping with mockery. "Still hanging with your rich buddy?" Malik clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay calm. "Not your business." Big J's grin faltered for a split second, replaced by a flicker of something Malik hadn't seen before: uncertainty. Malik realized that the tables had turned. Big J no longer had the power to intimidate him. "Whatever, man," Big J muttered, waving him off. "Stay out of my way." As Big J and his crew walked away, Malik felt a rush of relief and pride. He had faced his past and walked away unscathed. A family reunited. The holidays were approaching, and for the first time in years, the Walkers had something to celebrate. Darren had helped Sharon secure a scholarship for her certification course, easing the financial strain, and Malik's school had awarded him a small grant for his academic improvement. The grant wasn't just about the money. It was a validation of his hard work. One crisp December evening, Malik sat in the living room helping Nina decorate their small Christmas tree. The tree wasn't fancy, just a thrift store find with a few mismatched ornaments. But it was theirs. "What do you want for Christmas?" Nina asked, hanging a shiny red ball on a low branch. Malik thought for a moment. "I don't know. Maybe a basketball." Nina giggled. "You already have one." "Yeah, but it's getting worn out." Sharon walked in, carrying a tray of cocoa. "How about a new coat, Malik? I saw a nice one at the mall." Malik hesitated. "We don't have to spend money on me, Mama." Sharon set the tray down and kissed the top of his head. "Baby, you've worked so hard this year. You deserve something special." Malik smiled, feeling warmth spread through him, not just from the cocoa, but from the sense of belonging and security he hadn't felt in years. Darren's surprise. A few days before Christmas, Darren invited the family over to his house. Malik had never been to Darren's home before, and was stunned when they pulled up to the sprawling suburban property. The house was enormous, with a wide porch wrapped in twinkling lights and a manicured lawn dusted with snow. "Wow," Nina whispered, clutching Malik's hand as they walked up the driveway. Darren greeted them warmly at the door, his wife and teenage daughter standing beside him. "Welcome," he said, ushering them inside. The house was even more impressive on the inside. A massive Christmas tree stood in the corner, surrounded by beautifully wrapped gifts. Darren's wife, Linda, handed Sharon a cup of mulled cider, while Darren guided Malik and Nina to the living room. "This is amazing," Malik said, feeling out of place but grateful. Darren smiled. "I remember what it was like to see houses like this, and wonder if I'd ever belong. Trust me, Malik, you belong wherever you want to be." After dinner, Darren pulled Malik aside. "I've got something for you," he said, handing him a small box. Inside was a basketball, but not just any basketball. It was signed by Malik's favorite player, Ja Morant. Malik's eyes widened. "How did you?" "I have connections," Darren said with a wink. "You've earned it, kid." Sharon's graduation. In January, Sharon completed her certification course. The ceremony was small but meaningful, held in a community center with family and friends in attendance. Darren and his family were there, along with Malik and Nina, who clapped loudly as Sharon walked across the stage to receive her certificate. After the ceremony, Janice approached Sharon with an envelope. "Congratulations," she said, handing it to her. Inside was a letter offering Sharon a promotion to assistant property manager, a position that came with a significant raise. Sharon's hands trembled as she read the letter. This changes everything," she whispered. "It's well-deserved," Janice said with a smile. "You've worked hard for this." That evening, the Walkers celebrated with a homemade dinner. Malik watched his mother laugh and smile, the lines of worry on her face finally softening. Malik's big game. By spring, Malik had joined his school's basketball team. At first, he was hesitant. He wasn't as skilled as the other players, and he feared he wouldn't fit in. But with Darren's encouragement and hours of practice, he improved quickly. The team's final game of the season was against their biggest rival. The gym was packed, the energy electric. Malik's heart pounded as he stepped onto the court, but he focused on Darren's words. "Play your game. Don't let fear hold you back." The game was intense, with both teams trading baskets. In the final seconds, Malik's team was down by 1 point. Malik caught the ball near the three-point line, his hand steady despite the pressure. He took the shot. The ball sailed through the air in what felt like slow motion, then swished through the net just as the buzzer sounded. A crowd erupted in cheers, and Malik's teammates swarmed him, shouting his name. From the stands, Sharon wiped tears from her eyes, and Darren gave him a thumbs up. For the first time, Malik felt truly unstoppable. Looking ahead, by the end of the school year, Malik's grades had improved enough to place him in advanced classes for the following year. Sharon's promotion allowed them to move into a better apartment, one with 2 bedrooms, and a view of a small park where Nina loved to play. One evening, as the family sat on their new balcony watching the sunset, Sharon turned to Darren. "I don't know how we'll ever thank you." "You already have," Darren said. "Seeing you all thrive is thanks enough." Malik looked out at the city skyline, his heart full. He thought about how far they had come. From the scorching sidewalks of Hillview Boulevard to this moment of peace and promise. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, the road ahead felt bright. "Thank you," Malik said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. "For everything." Darren smiled. "You'll do the same for someone else someday. That's how we keep the cycle going." Malik nodded, determined to carry that lesson forward, because if there was one thing he'd learned, it was that change was possible. And sometimes, all it took was one person willing to believe in you. The ripple effect. By the time summer rolled around, Malik and his family had fully settled into their new life. The small apartment overlooking the park had become a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed, meals were shared, and the future no longer felt like an enemy. Malik, Sharon, and Nina were thriving in ways they hadn't thought possible just a year before. But as Malik soon learned, rebuilding a life was only the beginning. True change required giving back, helping others find the path he and his family had discovered. A new opportunity. One afternoon, Darren invited Malik to lunch at a cafe near his office. Malik arrived early, his confidence growing with every outing in the unfamiliar parts of the city. The sleek cafe, with its polished counters and neatly dressed patrons, no longer intimidated him. He ordered an iced tea and waited for Darren to arrive. When Darren walked in, he greeted Malik with his usual warm smile and sat across from him. "How's school?" Darren asked after ordering a coffee. "Good," Malik said, smiling. "I made honor roll this quarter." "Outstanding," Darren said, genuinely impressed. "I knew you had it in you. But I didn't just bring you here to talk about grades. I have a proposal for you." Malik leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of proposal?" Darren pulled out a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "You remember the study center we talked about?" Malik nodded. Darren had mentioned it briefly months ago. A space for kids in struggling neighborhoods to study, get tutoring, and feel safe. "Well, it's ready to launch," Darren said, "and I want you to help me run it." Malik blinked, stunned. "Me? But I don't know how to." "You'll have help," Darren interrupted, smiling. "And you're exactly the kind of person I need. You've been through the struggles these kids are facing. You know what it's like. That gives you a perspective no one else has." Malik stared at the folder, his heart pounding. "What would I have to do?" "For starters, help set up the space," Darren explained. "Organize supplies, talk to the kids, maybe even help with tutoring. We'll train you, and you'll get a stipend for your time. It's not just a job, Malik. It's a chance to pay it forward." Malik hesitated, the weight of the offer sinking in. He thought about all the people who had helped him. Darren, Ms. Green, his teachers, his mother. This was his chance to become that person for someone else. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice steady. Darren's smile widened. "I knew you would." The study center. The study center was housed in a converted community center in Hillview, just a few blocks from where Malik had grown up. Walking through the old neighborhood felt strange. The streets looked the same, but Malik felt different. He wasn't the scared, hungry boy sitting on the sidewalk anymore. He was someone with purpose. The space itself was a work in progress. The walls had been freshly painted in cheerful colors, and rows of desks and chairs filled the main room. A small library of donated books lined one wall, and a few laptops sat charging on a counter. Malik spent hours helping to set up the space, organizing books, assembling furniture, and brainstorming ideas with the other volunteers. On the center's opening day, Malik stood by the door, greeting the kids as they arrived. Most of them were younger than him, their wide eyes taking in the bright room and shiny new supplies. Malik recognized the nervousness in their faces. It was the same feeling he'd had on his first day at the charter school. "Welcome," he said to a boy who lingered by the door. "You here to study?" The boy nodded hesitantly. He looked about 8 years old, with oversized clothes and scuffed sneakers. "I'm Malik," he said, crouching to the boy's level. "What's your name?" "Jaden," the boy mumbled. "Well, Jaden, we've got books, computers, and even snacks. Come on in." Jaden smiled shyly and stepped inside. Malik watched as the boy found a seat and began flipping through a book. He felt a surge of pride. This was why he was here. Helping hands. Over the summer, the study center became a second home for Malik. He spent most afternoons there, helping kids with homework, organizing workshops, and even running a small basketball clinic in the parking lot. Word spread quickly, and soon the center was bustling with activity. One afternoon, while Malik was helping a group of kids with math problems, he noticed Jaden sitting alone in a corner, staring at a blank sheet of paper. Malik walked over and sat beside him. "Need help?" he asked. Jaden shrugged. "I don't get it." Malik glanced at the worksheet. It was simple addition and subtraction, but he could see the frustration in Jaden's eyes. "That's okay," Malik said. "We'll figure it out together." Over the next hour, Malik worked with Jaden step by step, breaking the problems down into smaller pieces. By the end, Jaden was solving equations on his own, his face lighting up with every correct answer. "I did it," Jaden exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. "You sure did," Malik said, clapping him on the back. "See, you're smarter than you think." Sharon's new role. While Malik was thriving at the study center, Sharon was making waves in her new position as assistant property manager. Her natural empathy and organizational skills made her a favorite among tenants, and her boss, Janice, had already hinted at a potential promotion. One evening, Sharon came home with a stack of flyers. "We're starting a tenant resource program," she explained, setting the flyers on the table. "Workshops on budgeting, parenting, job training, all free for the tenants." Malik picked up one of the flyers and smiled. "You're doing what Darren did for us." Sharon nodded, her eyes shining. "If we can help even one family, it's worth it." A community transformed. By the end of the summer, the study center had become a cornerstone of the Hillview community. Darren often stopped by to check on progress, and Malik was proud to show him how far they'd come. The kids who had once been hesitant to step through the door now came eagerly, their backpacks stuffed with books and their faces full of hope. But the true impact of the center became clear one evening when a familiar face walked in. Tommy, the corner store kid who had once mocked Malik for playing both sides, stood in the doorway, looking unsure. "Hey man," Malik said, walking over. "What brings you here?" Tommy shrugged. "Heard you were running this place. Thought I'd check it out." Malik grinned. "Well, you're welcome anytime. Need help with anything?" Tommy hesitated, then nodded. "Actually, yeah. I'm thinking about getting my GED. You think you could help me?" Malik's grin widened. "I know I can." Looking ahead, as the school year approached, Malik reflected on how much his life had changed. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving. But more importantly, he was making a difference. The study center, the kids he helped, the friendships he'd built, they were all proof that change was possible. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Malik sat on the balcony of their apartment with Darren. They watched the lights flicker on in the buildings below, the city humming with life. "You've come a long way," Darren said, sipping his coffee. "So have you," Malik replied. Darren chuckled. "Touché. But seriously, Malik, I'm proud of you. You've turned your struggles into something powerful. Malik nodded, his gaze distant. I want to do more. Not just here, but everywhere. I want to help kids like me see that they don't have to settle for less. Darren smiled. You will, and when you're ready, I'll be here to help. As the sky darkened, Malik felt a deep sense of peace. The journey ahead would be long, but he was ready. He had found his purpose, and he knew, without a doubt, that the best was yet to come. Legacy of change. The start of the new school year brought a fresh wave of challenges and opportunities for Malik. Over the summer, he had transformed from a quiet, unsure boy into a confident young leader, but the demands of balancing school, his responsibilities at the study center, and his own ambitions tested his resilience. As he navigated these waters, Malik began to understand the power of legacy, not just leaving behind something better, but actively shaping the world for those who would come next. The return to school. Walking into the charter school on the first day of 8th grade felt different this year. Malik no longer carried the weight of insecurity on his shoulders. His grades had earned him a place in the advanced math and science classes, and his teachers greeted him with knowing smiles. Welcome back, Malik. Ms. Green, the school counselor, said warmly as he passed her in the hallway. Ready to take on the world. Malik grinned, one step at a time. Despite his confidence, the advanced classes were no joke. By the second week, Malik was buried in equations and essays, his evenings filled with hours of homework after his time at the study center. There were moments of doubt, times when he wondered if he'd taken on too much. But each time he felt overwhelmed, he thought about Darren's advice: lean on the people who believe in you. The study center grows. The study center, now named the Hillview Learning Hub, had grown beyond Malik's wildest expectations. What started as a quiet space for a handful of kids had turned into a bustling community hub. Local businesses had donated supplies, parents volunteered to run workshops, and retired teachers offered free tutoring sessions. Darren had officially appointed Malik as the center's youth coordinator, a title that came with more responsibilities and a small stipend. Malik used his position to connect with the kids on a personal level, organizing events like a Science Saturday where they built model rockets, and a book club that sparked conversations about everything from superheroes to historical figures. One afternoon, as Malik was helping Jaden with his spelling words, a group of older boys lingered outside the center's glass doors. Malik recognized them instantly. Kids from his old neighborhood, ones who hadn't yet found a way out of the cycle of poverty and fear. He walked outside, his heart pounding. Hey, he called, his voice steady. You guys want to come in? The tallest boy, Tyrell, crossed his arms. What's in it for us? Malik shrugged. Snacks, computers, a place to hang out without getting hassled. Tyrell eyed him suspiciously, but eventually nodded. All right, but don't expect us to, do homework or nothing. Malik laughed. No pressure. Just check it out. By the end of the week, Tyrell and his friends were regulars at the center, using the computers to look up job applications and practicing their basketball skills in the makeshift court out back. Malik saw himself in them, kids who just needed someone to believe in them. Sharon's big leap. While Malik juggled school and the study center, Sharon's career was soaring. Her success as assistant property manager had caught the attention of the company's regional director, who offered her the chance to manage her own building, a larger, more complex property in a better part of the city. The offer was a dream come true, but it came with a difficult choice. Taking the job would mean moving to a new neighborhood, far from the roots they had worked so hard to establish. One evening, Sharon sat down with Malik and Nina to discuss the decision. This is a big step, she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I don't want to uproot you both, but this could change everything for us. Malik considered her words carefully. He thought about the stability they had finally found, but also about the opportunities that lay ahead. I think you should do it, Mama, he said finally. We'll figure it out. Nina nodded enthusiastically. Can I have my own room in the new place? Sharon laughed, her eyes welling with tears. We'll make it happen, baby. An unlikely ally. As Malik prepared for the move, he received an unexpected visitor at the study center. Tommy, the corner store kid turned GED student, walked in with someone Malik hadn't seen in a long time. Big J. Malik tensed instinctively, but kept his composure. What's going on? He asked, his voice calm but firm. Tommy scratched the back of his neck. Big J wanted to talk to you. Big J stepped forward, his swagger subdued. Look, man, I heard about what you're doing here. Tommy's been telling me how this place helped him. And I want to help too. Malik raised an eyebrow. Why the sudden change of heart? Big J shifted uncomfortably. I've been thinking about what you said, about choices. I made a lot of bad ones, but I'm trying to turn it around. Thought maybe I could volunteer or something. Malik studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but you've got to mean it. I do, Big J said quietly. Over the next few weeks, Big J became a surprising asset to the center. He connected with the older kids in a way Malik couldn't, using his own story as a cautionary tale. Malik found himself respecting the man he once feared. A new beginning. The move to the new apartment was bittersweet. The Walkers said goodbye to the neighborhood that had shaped them, packing up years of memories and leaving behind the study center that had become their second home. Darren reassured Malik that the center would continue to thrive under a new coordinator, but it still felt like leaving a piece of himself behind. Their new apartment was everything Sharon had dreamed of, spacious, modern, and located in a safe, vibrant neighborhood. Malik and Nina each had their own rooms, and the building's amenities included a gym and a rooftop garden. Sharon's new position came with a significant pay increase, giving her the financial security she had fought so hard to achieve. Malik's vision. Despite the move, Malik couldn't shake his connection to Hillview. He returned to the study center every weekend, mentoring the kids and staying involved in its growth. But as he settled into his new school and neighborhood, an idea began to form in his mind. One evening, he sat with Darren on the rooftop garden, sharing his vision. What if we opened more study centers? Malik said, his eyes alight with excitement. Not just in Hillview, but in other neighborhoods too. Places where kids need a safe space. Darren smiled, his pride evident. That's ambitious, but I think you could make it happen. I don't just want to help kids study, Malik continued. I want to help them see what's possible. Career workshops, internships, even scholarships. Darren nodded thoughtfully. You've got the passion, Malik. The next step is turning that passion into a plan. The first step. With Darren's guidance, Malik began drafting a proposal for a nonprofit organization focused on empowering underprivileged youth. He called it Bright Futures, a name that captured his vision of a world where every kid had a chance to succeed. The process was daunting. Grant applications, fundraising plans, networking with community leaders. But Malik tackled it with the same determination that had carried him through his hardest days. Sharon and Darren were his biggest supporters, offering advice, proofreading documents, and connecting him with potential partners. By the end of the school year, Malik had secured funding for the first 2 additional centers. One would be in Hillview, expanding the original site, and the other in a neighboring district with similar challenges. A legacy begins. On the day the new centers opened, Malik stood in front of a crowd of supporters, his heart pounding as he prepared to speak. Sharon and Nena sat in the front row, beaming with pride, while Darren stood off to the side, giving him an encouraging nod. This isn't just about study centers, Malik said, his voice steady despite the nerves. It's about giving kids hope. It's about showing them that they're not defined by where they come from, but by where they choose to go. The crowd erupted in applause, and Malik felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come full circle, from a scared boy on a burning sidewalk to a young leader creating opportunities for others. As the event wound down, Darren approached Malik, clapping a hand on his shoulder. You did it, he said, his voice filled with pride. "We did it," Malik corrected, smiling. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Malik stood on the steps of the new center, watching the kids stream inside. Somewhere deep in his heart, he knew this was just the beginning. His legacy of change was only getting started, and the possibilities were endless.